Welcome to Backstage Pass on the Boise Beat. Today we have a special treat for you as we welcome the electrifying Jason Damico, hailing all the way from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Jason is a high-octane blues rock recording artist, actor, multi-instrumentalist, podcaster, and producer, among so many other things. With deep, powerful vocals reminiscent of Jim Morrison and blistering guitar riffs that are inspired by Stevie Ray Vaughan and many others, Jason's soulful new blues sound has captivated audience all across the East Coast. He shared the stage with legends like B.B. King, earned multiple awards, and even ventured into acting with appearances in major productions. Get ready to dive into the world of this dynamic and versatile artist in Jason Damico. For jumping on board with me. Ecstatic to have you on deck. Super interesting character. And man, I got so many questions for you that I just want to get knocked out here. But first of all, hailing all the way from Raleigh, North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this Raleigh. I love that.
Yeah.
I think it's typically referred to as Raleigh, like Sir Walter Raleigh, but I like the Raleigh. I think I'm gonna start using that. It's got a little bit more
Yeah.
flair to it. It's cool.
It's my Idaho accent. It must be that I see it and I pronounce it that way.
Yeah. No, it's great, man.
Yeah, well, talk to me about it because I read up a little bit on the spot, and that actually is a kind of a cultural hub for some interesting music. You know, like classical music for one of those genres. But you had to have been influenced by some of the roots of music within that arena. And man, I see right behind you, you got like 50 guitars that are right behind you. Talk to me
Yeah.
about your influences growing up. You know, living in that part of the world, and just kind of how that impacted you.
Sure. Well, for those of you that don't know where Raleigh is, Raleigh, North Carolina is a very burgeoning, um, becoming very populated section of North Carolina, which is
Hmm.
on the east coast of the United States, about 600 miles south of New York and New York City. And it's been kind of a melting pot for a lot of different genres of music. There's been a lot of American Idol contest winners that have gone
Hmm.
all the way to win, or they've come up in second place, like Clay Aiken. And Clay Aiken is local to here. There's, in the jazz community from almost, 70, 80, 90 years ago, I believe John Coltrane was
Yeah.
from Winston-Salem or Greensboro, North Carolina, which is about an hour and a half from here. A lot of talent, a lot of there's a lot of richness in just kind of Americana and blues and country that's come out of here. We're about 8 hours east of Nashville, so there's a lot of kind of the Nashville community as well. And then obviously Delta Blues is about
Hmm.
10, 12 hours south, so we're kind of centrally located amongst all of that. And it's been, like I said, kind of a melting pot for a lot of those genres. And it's definitely a strong music community. It's not the biggest
Hmm.
in the United States, but it's definitely strong. And there's a lot of rich culture and history here in the arts.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, one of the things I read up on you was dating back a minute, but I seen that you had some kind of an injury, an eye injury that had kind of led
Yeah,
you into a deeper understanding and experience with music. And I'd like to unpack that if you're okay with talking about that and kind of just
sure.
delving into what that
Yeah.
was all about.
Yeah, it's funny. It really doesn't come up much in interviews, so I'm glad that you brought it up. It's a little bit of a pretty heavy topic, but you know,
Hmm.
I'll go through I'll kind of brush over a lot of details because
Sure.
it is what it is. But basically, when I was 14 years old, I was at my friend's house, and uh, the morning after a sleepover, we were just kind of hanging out. And at the time, Guitar Hero was a huge thing, and we were playing Guitar Hero probably up until freaking all night. Maybe got a couple
Mm-hmm.
hours of sleep, just typical teenage stuff. And there was a pond outside of my friend's house in his backyard, and my other buddy, they went to go like fish because they had a little, like just little carp and stuff in that pond. So they're out there fishing. I'm playing Guitar Hero, kind of exhausted, kind of, out of it. And I was thinking, I don't want to be antisocial here. Let me go out, hang out with my buddies. So I go out, and I had not really done a lot of fishing, so I wasn't that experienced. And we were home alone. There was really nobody there, no parental supervision. So we got some fishing lines. I cast mine out, and the line gets hooked on a piece of driftwood, and it just wasn't coming off. And I don't know if somebody suggested to cut the line. I don't really remember, but I felt really bad about it because it was my friend's dad's fishing gear, and it was really expensive. So I was just like, you know what? Let me just keep tugging on the thing. And this is a lesson to anybody who's watching. Don't do what I did, because I tugged so hard that next thing I know, I woke up on the ground, and I had severe pain in my right eye. And I just remember just looking up at my friends, and they're just horrified. Like, they're looking down at me like ghosts. And I couldn't see it on my right eye. It was really, it was a serious situation. And I just remember in that moment, and I'm very spiritual. I'm a believer in Jesus and, the Holy Spirit and all that stuff. And I just remember praying hard. I was like, man, and it's funny because the first thing that came to me was, God, please don't take my sight so it impacts my music. And it was kind of funny how that, works, right?
Sure.
Music is very audible. But at the time, I was doing a lot of I was studying drums very, very diligently. I was on path to maybe go to Berkeley for jazz drumming, and I was studying jazz, studying all these different aspects of music, specifically on the drum kit. So anyway, fast forward, we get my friend's dad comes and rushes me. He's driving 100 miles an hour on back roads to the nearest hospital, ER, and my mom gets there. She's all distraught and everything, rightfully so. And fast forward from that day to about 6 months later, I had been regularly having to go in to be checked up on almost every day, if not every day, for the first few months. And then eventually I had something called traumatic cataract replacement lens surgery. And so they basically it's the surgery that's done for the elderly when they can't really see well, because cataracts can occur, and it basically clouds your vision. Mine was due to a traumatic impact, but typically it happens from old age. So I'm in the waiting room with a bunch of 80, 90-year-olds, and they're looking at me why is this 14-year-old kid getting eye surgery? So that happened. During the recovery time, to kind of answer your question more specifically, which is really the main part of the story, is kind of not to focus on the bad of it, but really the good that came out of it. Obviously, I was convalescing, laying up in bed for a long amount of time, months on end. I couldn't lift more than 5 pounds. I was sitting up in bed. It was really difficult to sleep because I was basically sleeping maybe like this, right? I really couldn't go back because there was so much scar tissue. And they just wanted to keep monitoring me. So anyway, I'm sitting there listening to records, and big Van Halen fan, the Police fan, you name it, anything 60s, 70s, 80s, I was obsessed with, right? I'm listening to this music, and the only way I can describe it, brother, is I'm sitting there and I'm listening to this Police album, and I remember it specifically. It was either Regatta de Blanc or Zenyatta Mondat, however it's pronounced. I'm probably butchering it, but it's one of those classic Police records. And I remember within 5 or 10 seconds of listening to this thing, it the only way I can describe it is this black veil was lifted from my hearing, and all of a sudden I just heard everything at once.
Wow.
And prior to this point, I was only listening to drums on albums and on records. But now I'm hearing, like, I'm just hearing everything at once, and I'm hearing spatial differences and all these. Now, what I could tell you is it's like mixing. It's how, mixing and engineers kind of and producers will listen to music, as you probably know yourself, right? Listen to
Yeah.
different
Right.
spatial recognitions and all these things. So fast forward another 6 months, I'm starting high school and I'm clipping out of music courses. And my teachers are saying that I have college level music theory, but I never really took any music theory courses
Wow.
because it was just, I was just a drummer, like really
Mm-hmm.
just a drummer. I only knew like power chords on guitar up until this point. And so something happened, something changed permanently from that. And I've heard of this happening before with other people. If somebody loses a limb or somebody loses a sense, it's strengthened in other areas that you still have. So
Yeah.
um, that's a really long story. I try to condense it and kind of give you guys some cliff notes, but
Yeah.
that's basically what happened. And then from there, I just started writing heavily and diving deep into guitar. That was one of the main catalysts for me was that
Mm.
that injury, and then just really getting into more melodic type instruments.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So you said that earlier when that happened, the first thing that kind of came to mind was, hey, I'm gonna ask God, please don't take it away. Like, please don't take my ability to
Yeah,
see away. But
yeah,
then all of a sudden, or not all of a sudden, but down the road, then you get amplified all these other gifts that came out because of it, and now you're picking up a guitar, right? And the guitar is kind of, what your focal point is now as a musician, correct? You're mainly a guitarist.
yeah. It's kind of funny. I mean, I'm looking at the business's balance sheet over the last few months, and it's like 70-80% of the income has just been straight guitar for the last 3 to 4 months. And it's just strange because I've always considered myself more of an artist first, but I
Mm,
guess people really are liking what I'm doing, and that's phenomenal. That's amazing. That's a huge blessing. And
yeah,
besides me being an artist, I've got these opportunities playing guitar for other artists and other entities. So that's awesome. That's great.
yeah. With you saying that, the kind of curveball, but maybe it might seem a little bit off topic, but not really because of the audience that'll be listening to this. You
Sure.
mentioned having your balance sheet that you're keeping tabs on, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but I personally, with musicians and many, quote unquote artists, um, not the best in the business space, and not the best in like organizing themselves. Talk to me about the importance of like having a system or some order in place to like know, you know, how to put where to put your money, how to manage your money, like that kind of thing, because I think people need to hear that.
Sure. Well, so here's the funny thing is I actually went to school for business, and I graduated with a bachelor's of science in business administration with a focus on leadership.
Mm,
And so and I say that to preface it by saying this. I went to school for business. Like, I have a degree in it.
uh-huh.
And I still, after I graduated, I went to a good school. It was a good program. It was a good online program, but I still didn't feel prepared,
Sure.
right, after I graduated at all. Like, there's
Yeah.
just certain things that you're just not going to learn
Yeah.
unless you get your hands in there on a regular basis
Right.
with a business. And you got
Yeah.
to make those mistakes. You got to just kind of go through that. So, um, to talk about it briefly, that's kind of my main
Mm,
background in business is having schooling in it, and then obviously I've owned this company. My parents helped me start it about 10 years ago,
mhm,
and they still help me to this day with running it from kind of an admin point of view.
mhm.
I've had external management come in. I've worked independently. I'm currently working independently. And really, at the end of the day, is like the entrepreneurial spirit is,
Mhm.
it's really one of, and you know this as another business owner, I'm sure, it's like you're just going to have to start making moves
Yeah.
and have a tremendous amount of faith, and the dots are never, I mean, it's almost ever never going to connect until you get
Mhm.
to a certain place. And usually it's in hindsight where it all makes sense. So
Yeah.
it's more of a faith walk than really having it all figured out, because I mean, you can do analysis paralysis for days, weeks, months,
Right.
years, and I've done that. And
Mhm.
it's it hasn't really worked for me in certain regards when I've done it that way versus just going for it, making it happen. And, having a good team is very important as well. I've got a great accountant now. I didn't for a number of years, and that was a whole nightmare. So, having a good accountant, having a good attorney, having, some good booking agents to help you. But I really think you need to know all aspects of the business.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to excel doing all of it. You have to be able to delegate and replicate those skill sets with other people and trust those team members. But as far as, the day-to-day in the business, you got to have your hands in it. I don't see how you can't move forward how you could move forward without doing that.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Totally unscripted,
Sure.
by the way, folks, if you're hearing that, but wanted to make sure we plugged it in. So don't have to do it. Find some experts, but you got to do it.
And if I could just add one more thing, there's a lot of great literature out there. And if anybody's hearing this, it doesn't matter if they're, 10, 15, 20, 40, 50. I mean, we're all on our different journeys here. I could recommend a couple of folks, just kind of like bare bone basics. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. Doesn't matter what industry you're in. Read that book. Psycho Cybernetics, Max, whatever his name is, the doctor that wrote that incredible book. The Power of Positive Thinking, Norman Vincent Peale. Any of Kevin Trudeau's stuff, Your Wish is Your Command. Any of this stuff where it balances spiritual and business, huge. Ty Lopez, another great guy. So just those resources are there, and make sure who you're listening to is somebody who's been where you are currently and was able to overcome those challenges, because getting advice from the wrong people has been a huge thing in this industry. You got to listen to people that are where you want to be and have been where you currently are.
Yeah. Speaking of putting your eye on a target here, your style has been described as kind of a blend of, Jim Morrison, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix. I'm sure a lot of those guys you've kind of, looked at and been like, man, I aspire to get to that spot, one day. Talk to me about how those kind of icons in music have like impacted your current style and, how you currently play.
Great question. I think some things happen because you may have a natural tendency to sound or look like somebody. So, I was referred to as John Stamos in high school so much ad nauseum. It was like, I don't want to watch Full House anymore. But that's not a bad. I mean, guy's a handsome guy. I'll take it. It's a great compliment. Same thing with Elvis, right? It's people they expect me to throw in an Elvis cover at shows, and that's great. I'll do it. That's fine. But having the lower voice, kind of that kind of baritone, more rounder, bigger voice will obviously that's going to be part of the sound. So it's kind of hard for me to escape some of those just things in general that label, people may label onto you and put on you. But again, use it to your advantage, right? It's a thing, but you got to be your own person. The Stevie Ray Vaughan thing, I mean, I was just completely I see whenever I get into the Stevie Ray Vaughan world, I don't even know how to describe it, because when I heard his version of Little Wing for the first time, first of all, I didn't even know it was a Hendrix cover. And I heard this thing and I'm going, I didn't even know a guitar could sound like that. It completely grabbed me, right? At 13, 14 years old. So, when you have those influences that just grab you, you got to follow that path. And I mean, I was just laser focused from probably 14 to 18, 19, 20 years old, just, constantly learning every lick, every nuance, every type of like, what is the psychology of what he's doing? Why is he doing it? So that was a big part of his influence. And like I said, some things happen because you may have a natural tendency to sound like somebody versus this is a huge influence. I got to follow this yellow brick road. This is just life changing for me. And then, you know, you have your 50, 100, 150 major influences. You put in the 10,000 hours, and then, you know, you stick with it for long enough, and hopefully you start having an identity and
Right.
a signature and a thumbprint that's kind of uniquely you. And
Yeah.
I think at this point we're starting to see that, and that's exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah. You know, with collaborations that are in place, because I've seen you got quite the resume, man. I mean, compared to, you know, a lot of different people,
Thank you.
comparisons aside, but nonetheless, like, I'm sure you got, you know, some that are maybe some standouts for you. Like, what would be some of the most favorite collaborations to date that you've had the pleasure of taking part in? Um, Unpack that for me.
Well, Eric Gales would obviously be way up on the list, and that's a
Mm,
guy who, again, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, guitar players in the world and kind of the blues rock genre. Absolutely. If you haven't seen him live, if you haven't heard of him, whoever is listening or watching, go check him out. Especially if you're a guitar player, he will completely.
mm,
It's mind boggling, and he plays upside down, not restrung.
yeah.
So everything he's doing is, you know, like the Albert King thing. I mean, Hendrix restrung his guitar. So it
Hmm.
was set up for a lefty, even though he's playing an upside down guitar. So Eric and Albert and some of these other guys, they literally play left-handed
Hmm.
upside down. So master, absolute master. I started following his career when I was a teenager, and a couple of crazy kind of opportunities opened up during the pandemic. I mean, it was a long shot. I just sent out an email to his management. It was like, hey, I got this song that I'm looking to do, and I know Eric's like kind of close to where I live, and he's actually in North Carolina as well. So I just took a shot, man, and
Hmm.
they actually were into it, and next thing I know, I'm in the studio with him. So,
Wow.
but that relationship, I mean, it wasn't like I just emailed him and it happened. It was he knew I kind of existed for about 5 or 7 years because I was going to these guitar summits and,
Mm,
you know, going to see his shows. When I was living in New York, I'd go see him when he would come through at like Town Crier or some of these other venues up there. So he's just insane. And then I had the pleasure of having Kenny Aronoff on one of those songs as well on Delusional.
mhm,
Was co-produced with Eric Gales. I produced it with him, and then Kenny was playing drums on it. Tony Franklin, another, you know, major monster bass player. He's played with everybody. I mean, Jimmy Page to um, I think he's on tour with the guy from Creedence Clearwater. I think John
mhm,
Fogerty.
yeah.
So you know, insane musicians. These guys are unbelievable. So just really blessed to be able to work with them. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is amazing. You know, I don't want to assume that anybody that's listening may, you know, already know him. We'll probably put like one of your players in here so people can just quickly be able to listen to your music, etc. Just go to
Sure.
it. But describe for me if you could, so I don't label it. Describe for me your music. Like, what would somebody expect to hear when they push play to Jason Damico? Like a mixture of both your playing, your baritone voice, like can you describe for me what that experience is for somebody? What's it feel like? What's it sound like? What's it look like?
We've had over the years, and the band's been around for over 10 years at this point. Um, we've had this phrase, and I don't know if we've coined it, but because I've seen it pop up in other areas in the industry, but we've always, and the band is called what the phrase is, which is
Mm,
Jason D'Amico and the New Blue.
mm,
So, you know, what does that kind of mean? And little kind of digression just for a second. New Blue, when we named that band, that had nothing to do with, I mean, it had something to do with blues music, but it was
sure.
actually my dad's, he had like I guess like a fantasy football team, and he's a
Mm,
big Giants fan, New York Giants fan, and they're called Big Blue. So he actually called his fantasy football team like New Blue, whatever, or something. And it was around the same time I was starting my band. And they're like, you
mm,
know, New Blue and all right, you know, blues music. All right, let's go for it. And the name is stuck. So
yeah.
uh not related, but related, right? So you just kind of roll with it. Uh, you know, but that's what it is it's a new blue. It's you know, we love playing, we love paying homage and playing tributes to those classic blues songs, like, Albert King, Born Under a Bad Sign, and all these. It's the same ingredients. Elvis did those classic covers. Stevie Ray Vaughan did those classic covers. Hendrix did those classic covers, right? So, Eric Gales does. I mean, and moving through the generations. So we have those in the list, in the set list. But as for me as the artist, I've always been a song guy, so I'm always going for as much musical value as I possibly can bring in each song. Big Beatles fan. I mean, to me, they brought some of the most musical value. And some of those pop songs too, like Max Martin, if he incredible writer, and anything he collaborated with, whether it was NSYNC or Backstreet Boys or whatever. And I'm not pop, but I've got a huge admiration to anybody that can write a killer song. Metallica. Killer songs, The Doors, killer songs, Prince, Chili Peppers, so all these, I mean, I'm all over the place with the genres, but it's like they have killer songs. So anything that's got great hooks, great energy, obviously I got to shred a little bit, but it's not about the shredding. It's fun. People expect it when they come to our shows because it's part of the brand, but hopefully they get a great, authentic, lively, big energy, big, experience like that. And hopefully it's something that my big thing is if they come in, if you come into our show and if you leave feeling better than how you came in, then we did our job. That's kind of the way that I look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah. That's a good description. Much more than the music, man. Like you just described a kind of a melting pot of what you dive into in the live performance space, but it kind of mirrors this other space that you operate in, right? Because you also have somewhat of a prolific acting career as well. And for anybody that's into shows, they might have heard of certain ones like The Irishman or Quantico. Talk to me how you've been able to balance an acting career along with music. I mean, balance is probably not even the word. I don't even like using balance, especially in this space, right? Or entrepreneurialism.
Well, I'm laughing because I don't know. I really don't know, and I kind of wish that it was more of one than the other, because then it would be a little bit more focused. Which I have control over that, right? I could say, hey, I'm done with this. We're doing, and we do that, right? We got a summer tour coming up with the band, so of course we're going to be laser focused on that for the next couple of months. But I grew up as a baby model, so I don't know anything. I can't even remember my life without being in front of camera, and the checks were great, right? So why are we gonna reinvent the wheel here? And I love it, right? I mean, who doesn't love to? And I guess some people don't, but I love getting into experimenting with different characters and just if you've ever been on a film and TV set, everything's like fantasy world. Everything's a joke. You've got people bringing in food. You're getting paid to eat. You're getting paid to sit around. You're getting paid to it's just ridiculous. So obviously you got to show up and do the work. It's not easy, but it kind of is. You just got to pick your battles. So the balance of it, I laugh when you say the word balance, because to me, I don't really see that much of a difference between it's still, you're telling a story. The medium is just, it's through words and through scripting and through the art of telling a story through a character and lighting and all these different things. I mean, it's the same thing pretty much as the music industry. You're just doing it to song. So same thing with music videos. It's just telling stories and influencing people and capturing them with emotions. And I think of some of the best films of all time. If you listen, there's real beautiful cadences and the moments of silence, between the actors and the actresses, the way it's produced and the editing. I mean, editing in itself is a whole other art form, and the cadence of a great edit. So to me, it's all about cadence. It's all about space when there's supposed to be space, and moments for that space to not be void, and for things to be in that space. So very abstract, but hopefully that kind of I mean, I don't know if I'm
Yeah,
answering the question, but it's the balance of it has been difficult at times, and it's been
sure.
a challenge.
Yeah,
But at the same time, it's kind of my brand, so I don't really know how else to do it because
yeah,
I get called in for specific roles, like with Rosemary Street. You know, that's a
mm,
great web series that's going on right now in Baltimore, and I got called in because I'm a musician actor, and
mm-hmm,
that is called for the role. And
yeah,
you know, same thing in the music world. Like I'll get endorsements or whatever because I play music, but I also have done a lot in the commercial film and TV and, you know, UGC space and social media ad space. So they
mm,
kind of overlap.
yeah. No, exactly. No, they do. They absolutely overlap. Are there any other? You just dropped one right now that's going on, especially within a specific spot in the East Coast. But
Mhm.
outside of that, is there any upcoming projects that you're working on, collaborations that you want to share?
Sure. We got Laws of Man, which is epic. That's going to be
Mm,
dropping probably in the fall. That's a major motion picture that my buddy Phil Blattenberger, very extremely talented writer and producer and director. That guy,
mm,
that guy's insane. I mean, that guy will pull 18, 20, 22-hour days.
okay.
I mean, consecutively for years on end to get a project done. So we've worked with Phil for a number of years. He's an absolute Mongol. He's unbelievable. And Laws of Man is his newest baby.
Mm,
That has been successfully completed. He was just in Cannes, at the Cannes Festival in France.
mm,
Um, you know, just hyping up the film and being a part of all the events there. So that's very exciting. That should be dropping. We've got a couple of song placements in that. I also am a
nice.
German soldier in that. So
Mm,
there's a lot of cool stuff, and I also have a brief voiceover in that. So it's like
mm,
everything going on in that movie. It's really cool.
yeah, that's awesome. Wow, that's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
You definitely
yeah,
got your plate full. It sounds like coming up with this. Yeah,
yeah. You know, it's like I said, it's a challenge, but you know, you just every 3 to 6 months you take audit of what's going on and you cut out what's no longer serving the business and keep moving
mm,
forward to what you want. You just keep focusing on what you want, keep pressing into that.
yeah. As a couple final plugs, one, I want to ask you if you'd leave listeners with a final thought, especially anybody that's an aspiring musician. What would be some golden piece of wisdom that you would give them and say, "Hey, I wish I would have had this," or "I wish somebody would have mentored me in this space. They would have given me this advice." Like, is there kind of a silver bullet, if you would, piece of wisdom that you'd give aspiring actors, musicians, entrepreneurs?
You know, it's so
I know it's a loaded question, huh?
no, it's a great question, and I just want to give something that's really going to be impactful and not talk for an hour
Mhm,
because I have a huge passion for questions like that,
mm,
and I still at 30, I'm still figuring stuff out that
sure.
it's just paramount, right?
Mhm,
So I'll say this. I think that the first thing that comes to mind is a lot of whatever I'm about to say, somebody probably told me and I just wasn't listening, right? So
mm,
whether it was from a parent, whether it was from a mentor, and a lot of stuff did stick, right?
yeah,
But some of it just isn't going to land until you're ready for
right,
it to land. And it,
right.
it just is what it is, right?
Mhm,
I would say the number one most important thing is to just get super, super clear, super, super focused on what you want, kind of like what I was saying earlier.
mhm,
And that can be a little difficult, right? Because as a
yeah,
young person, there's a lot of pressure culturally,
mhm,
socially, family wise.
yeah,
There can be a lot of different things, right? And, you know, one of the and coupled with that, get really clear, get really focused on what you want, and really just make enjoyment a priority.
mm,
That's one thing that I kind of put on the back burner in some regards. Did I love putting in the countless hours, on the fretboard and all these different aspects of learning the business? Yeah, absolutely. Through the blood, through the sweat, through the
mhm,
tears, you got to love all of it. but just being intentional about, okay, looking for the gold in every situation, enjoying the process as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Because that's really, at the end of the day, what matters. There's no guarantee. I mean, this thing is a huge crapshoot, this industry. But if you're enjoying it, you're going to move forward a lot faster, I believe, because it's not going to feel like work. So if you're not really enjoying it, it doesn't mean that you stop. It just means, okay, let me regroup on my clarity and my focus with my goals, and let me take a look at, let me see what's going on here. And it's perfectly okay. Maybe this industry isn't for you full time. That's fine. For a lot of people it isn't, and they just kind of do the weekend thing, and that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. And a lot of people, they're so good that if they do their 9 to 5 and they're doing their weekend thing and they just take the right steps, they make it even faster and hit their goals faster than, some of us that are just, kind of like grinding it out week after week. But that's a toss up. That's a personal choice. The other thing I would say is really kind of like what you alluded to earlier, is get versed in business to a certain degree. Make sure that you are reading great literature on entrepreneurship, arts and entertainment. Look at the models, look at what people have done before you, and avoid those same mistakes and pitfalls, and then also learn from what they did successfully, and just find that model and just keep refining and refining and refining. Get a great mentor. Absolutely get a great mentor. Again, find somebody that's where you want to be. And that you got to ask those questions. Where are they at 60 years old? Where are they at 70 years old? Are they where I want to be there at that age? God willing, I make it that far. And then what were they doing at my age? Where were they? So ask those 2 questions. Those are very important. And then, just, you got to have fun. And now I'm sounding like everybody that I was listening to, but I wasn't listening to, right? When I was a teenager, because I was like, man, I got to be the best. And I got to, and there's no such thing as the best. There's no such thing as any of that. It's have fun, enjoy the ride, because that's really what it's about. It's every day is a blessing, and just use every day to your advantage. I'll say one more thing, and then I'll let you wrap this up, because I know I'm saying a lot here. I've heard this one, you could call it a parable, this one kind of nugget that's really, really good, which is, if you wake up and you look around and you go, somebody were to offer you, hey, like, give me a finger and I'll give you $1 billion. I don't think anybody would take that deal. Give me an eye, I'll give you $1 billion. Give me, an ear, I'll give you $1 billion. I don't think anybody would really take that. I don't know, maybe somebody would, I don't know. But if I were to bet, a lot of people wouldn't. So know that you're already rich. Know that you already have everything that you need to succeed. And affirm that. Like, affirmations are huge. Do some research on those. If you guys haven't heard of affirmations, positive affirmations, right? Get in the word. For some of you, it may not be the Bible. That's cool, whatever. But just getting to really, really good, spiritually sound principles. For me, I'd recommend the Bible. At least take a look at it. It's worth it to me. But, do what you're going to do. And look at all these different universal spiritual principles of faith, staying positive, you speaking life into yourself and into others, and then moving from that point. So, all right, I'm done.
No, that was great. That was great. Yeah, if you didn't catch all that, better rewind it, because that was definitely a really good answer. Appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you.
Where can people find you at online, as a final plug here?
Sure. JasonDamico.com. For tour dates, JasonDamico.com/tour. All social media, to my knowledge, is J Damico Official, at J Damico Official. So you can get everything there. And we're having a great time doing what we're doing. And we're just trucking, man. We're just having a good time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had a blast with you here today too, Jason. So Thank you so much for joining us on Backstage Pass on the Boise Beat. This is your boy Gordie Tamayo signing off. Until next time.